Hello, 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 everyone. Lovely to have you here. I think for most of you, it's good afternoon, also good evening to at least one of you I know. So welcome to the session today. Okay, so what we're going to go through today is the ingredients of a successful, so I can't even talk now, a successful recovery journey. And it's really just the reason why I put this together, because there are so many people out there who literally, not after just months, but years, they're still struggling to recover. And there is really the certain types of elements that really have to be included in a recovery journey. So many of them say they've been going, they feel they're supported because they've been going for therapy for years, but that shouldn't be the case. It's 100% possible to recover from narcissistic abuse, and not in years, but in months. So that's the purpose of this session, is just really to show you that. Just quickly, just a little bit about me. So this is me, where I live now. It's a little Portuguese island in the middle of the Atlantic. I'm not going to share any more about myself today, but if you're interested, you can find more about me on my website, and my full story is also on there. And I live a pretty idealistic life, but it has only been possible because of the work I did in building my own self-love. So I had to build the self-love because I've actually was victim to narcissistic abuse myself to two people. But like I said, if you want to know more about my story, go to my website. My full story is there. Okay, so what you're going to get from this live session is just going to be a quick outline about what should be included in a recovery journey and why. I'm not going to go into any detail about anything really today. This is just really about building your awareness of what is really required. So if you have already been on a healing journey and you don't seem to be having much progress, or you've done loads of work already and you've made loads of progress, but you just don't feel you're getting to that end, hopefully this will help you at that stage. Or even maybe you're just about to leave a relationship, it will make you realize what you have to prepare for, because it is a long, hard journey. It's not easy. So this can help. And also maybe there are those who have just got out of a relationship. So there's a chance for questions at the end, but please feel free at any point, just if you have a question at any time, just shout out. Either just unmute yourself and say, "Question please, Chris," or put it in the chat, and I'll answer the questions from the chat. And just to make you aware that video has been disabled at the moment, but if you want to be seen, you can enable your video yourself if you want to be seen. So you only really see me. Okay, so there are 5 things I'd like you to take into account as we're going through this. And number 1 is that just to be aware that any and every recovery program is grounded by having to develop your self-love. Okay, it's important to recognize that. Number 2 is the importance of the order. You'll see that I will be using my own recovery roadmap to explain the process to you. And I believe very strongly in the order on how you deal with things to make your journey as short as possible. It's always going to be a long journey, no matter how you do it. But if you go along in the process I show you, it will become way shorter than it really, it will become shorter than it could ever be, really, I believe. Okay, number 3, it requires building up, creating a new you. You have to completely reprogram yourself to think and behave differently, so that you don't become a victim again. And I know for many people, when they say, why are you doing this? They often say, I want to get back to the old me. And I can tell you, when you do this work, you will not get back to the old you. So it is something to come to terms with. For some people, that's something, it's difficult to come to terms with that. But I think to recognize that the new you that's going to come out of this is going to be way better than the old you. And number 4 is to recognize that this journey takes, the practice. It's practice, 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 and that's the hard work. It's daily, consistent practice. And number 5 is, oh yeah, if you stay until the end, I have an offer for you. And yes, it's 100% free. Okay, so this is my roadmap. You know, if you download it, this is the PDF. This is what it looks like. So that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to use my roadmap to explain the whole process to you. And it's 8 steps, consists of 8 steps, which I'll go through in a little bit more detail. And you'll see that although I've said that this whole recovery journey is grounded by self-love, you'll see only step 8, we actually only get to where self-love is actually mentioned. But as we go through, I hope you'll understand why moving through the recovery journey in this step-by-step process is really important. So and when we get to step 8, we focus on self-love using the 10 branches of self-love. And lots of people who do work in self-love and actually narcissistic abuse actually use these 10 branches. Not everyone though. But what I really like about them is that they really cover every single element of self-love. So, and that's also why I like my roadmap, is that it's a very pragmatic, consistent way in which to make sure that you cover every element that you need to cover, to make sure that when you come to the end of your recovery journey, you've actually explored every element of, say, your psyche that needs to be explored. And here, just as you can see, it fits on 2 slides, my infographics, so you can see. And if we go back again, you see steps 1 to 8. And then when we get to step 8, then we have the self-love. And you can see how I've broken up the self-love elements into those that are repair. So most undamaged people won't require that much repair in elements 1 to 6, but for those who have suffered narcissistic abuse will require lots and lots of repair in those elements. And then when you get to number 7, which is self-esteem, self-esteem is actually incorporating all of the other 6 elements of self-love, the branches of self-love. And when you're able to practice those all healthily, you have a healthy level of self-esteem. So idealistic, to maintain a happy life, you need to get to step number 7. And if you really want to build and make it a truly thriving, invigorating life, then you can go on to steps 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so if we go through the 8 steps now, so we have education and validation, and narcissism and narcissistic abuse can really be a bit of a bugger to get your head around. And without doing that, you'll never come to terms with how you've been treated. And narcissistic abuse is insidious and doesn't really follow basic psychology. So it's almost like, not impossible, but it's almost useless trying to understand it, because you have to understand a completely different type of psychology. You must remember it's a disorder. It's not human nature. Okay, so this education helps validate how you felt while you're in the relationship, and it also helps validate how you feel once you're out of it. So for you that are in here, I know at least a couple of you, I know that that's where you are at the moment. So you're out of the relationship, and this could really help you, help validate that for you. And to go and educate yourself, I would prioritize these 3 areas and maybe a 4th area. So you've got cognitive dissonance, and this is where the toxic person switches between punishment and reward for no rhyme or reason. You never know when to expect either. There's gaslighting, sometimes referred to, or often referred to, as crazy making, because literally makes you feel so crazy. So many people have been institutionalized because of this. They're not crazy, but they're led to believe that they are crazy. And if you've educated yourself on those 2, then when you get to trauma bonding, it will be a bit easier to understand trauma bonding. And so I won't go into that, because you really need to go a bit more into reading in that to understand it. But if you realize you are trauma bonded, then it's really important that you educate yourself around going no contact, because the best way to break a trauma bond is to go full no contact. In some cases, this is not possible, but where you can, it's important that you do that. And those are just the ways that you can educate yourself. There are loads of resources out there, and I can tell you, you can't get anything, there's nothing dangerous on Google or YouTube or anything, so go mad researching there. The only caveat I'd say here is the Facebook groups. You know, most of the posts on Facebook groups are done from a victim state, so just be very careful, because the more time you spend in there and the longer you spend in there, the more likely you are to stay in a victim state. And that is not, as long as you're in a victim state, you will not heal. So it's important for you to recognize that. It's quite a good resource for educating yourself, so you can recognize what other people are suffering, and also it also helps you not feel alone, because having suffered from narcissistic abuse is a very lonely place to be, because no one really understands how you feel. And it's also really important to educate yourself on healthy relationships. Many of us who have ended up in this situation really aren't aware of what a healthy relationship should look like. So it can also be really important to educate yourself in that. And, you know, for just any relationship, the three important elements are mutual honesty, mutual respect, and mutual trust. If your relationship doesn't have that, it suggests at least one of, you know, any one of those things, it suggests it's not fully healthy. And then also, if you have a romantic relationship, you also need to have some kind of affection there between the two of you. Then we get on to self-care, and I actually suffered physically from my abuse, from all the anxiety and stress over the years. So I've done a lot of education around self-care. When you go onto Google, you'll notice that lots of people have different ideas about what self-care is, although when you really go into the true sense, and when you're recovering from any kind of abuse, you know, not just narcissistic abuse, but drug abuse, alcoholics abuse, you need some more intensive self-care. And I've come up with these 9, which I think are particularly important. But you will see there that I've highlighted journaling. And it's important to recognize that journaling is one of the key tools for your recovery. It helps you process just about everything, your thoughts, your emotions. So if you haven't already started a daily journal practice, I would really advise you to start one as soon as possible. And I also have a self-care e-guide, and when I send you the recording, I will send you a copy of my self-care e-guide. And if you haven't implemented any self-care yet, I'm hoping that this will give you a kick up the backside and start you doing it. Step number 3 is recognizing it's about you, not them. Now, we really can't change others. I think, although you might not have accepted that, I think you do know that's how it is, especially not narcissists. We cannot change narcissists. Sorry, I can't get my tongue around words today. But in relation to non-narcissistic people, changing our behavior can most often change the behavior of the person that we're actually interacting with. Now, in relation to narcissists, it's really a waste of time thinking we can, you know, change their behavior into becoming this kind and loving person. It's just not going to happen. So I'm not talking about narcissists. I'm talking about our normal, average people, okay? And if you do the education, you'll understand why no matter how much you change your behavior, it's not going to change the behavior of a narcissist or into a loving person, a normal, loving person. But it is important to be able to take responsibility for how our own behaviors allowed us to enter into the toxic relationship. So here we're talking about our adult relationships and not referring to childhood relationships with a narcissistic parent, because obviously you can't be held responsible for what happened in your childhood at that time. However, as an adult, we should now be taking responsibility for how we continue to allow ourselves to be treated. And this is in no way blaming ourselves, okay? But rather to have a realization of the things that we need to change within ourselves so that we don't fall victim to these kinds of people ever again. And we need to be willing to realize and accept that we were the ones who fell victim to the love bombing because we had a possibly a desperate, unhealthy need to feel loved. We chose to ignore the red flags. And when you do this work, you will come to recognize the red flags, and you will say to yourself, oh my goodness, how on earth did I miss those? And that's a very important step in part of your recovery, to be able to recognize those red flags that were in the beginning, because you will notice them. And, you know, we allow the toxic person to talk disrespectfully to us. I know it just slowly started, but we did allow it, okay? And we chose, for those of you who had unfaithful wives, but not just unfaithful, they might have offended in many other ways. No, we chose to believe that they would change, even though they kept on reoffending time after time. So that might include some physical abuse, financial abuse, you know, there are loads of things they could have done. And once we're able to acknowledge these, it will be so much easier to recognize where we need to change, what we need to change within ourselves. So that is very important. Okay, step number 4 is emotions. And just like the slide says, you don't build psychological resilience by feeling good all the time. You build it by getting better at feeling bad. Okay, so just about all of us have fallen victim. Just about all of us who have fallen victim to narcissists is because we never learned to be comfortable with our emotions. And for those who were brought up by narcissistic parents, it's unlikely that you ever learn to develop healthy emotional connections with people either. So we need to be able to recognize our negative emotions as a healthy signal, really, a signal that something is not right, and that ignoring them is only going to cause them to build up over time. So we need to find ways to release them. Otherwise, they end up causing things like anxiety, stress, depression, and even physical conditions like me. And this is likely to be a brand new skill that needs to be developed for just about everyone, okay? So it's not going to take days or weeks, but rather months. But there are some great but really simple exercises to help everyone with this. But, you know, I'm going to say again, this takes practice, practice, practice. So you can just imagine, you know, practicing getting comfy with your emotions, and it's something that you have to do daily, because all day long we are feeling emotions. Okay, but for most of us who have fallen victim to narcissistic abuse, we just haven't got to really acknowledge them and sit with them and release them. And that's what's important to be able to do. And please note, the steps, I was telling you the order is very important. So I hope you can start to recognize the order in which we're going. Step number 5 is negative thinking. And we all have that little voice talking shit to us, okay? But if we have experienced narcissistic abuse or a particular toxic relationship, not only do we have our own voice talking shit to us, but we can't seem to switch that voice off, you know, our ex's voice as talking, doing the same thing to us. And research seems to suggest that there is no way of getting rid of these negative thoughts completely, but rather learning how to keep a handle on them so they don't get the better of us. So even if we seem to have mastered the art, it does require constant maintenance throughout the rest of our lives. So the sooner we can get to grips with this, the better, okay? And again, like I said, practice, practice, practice. And this is done by first becoming able to recognize our negative thoughts and then learning on how to reframe them into something positive. And I know you're thinking, oh yeah, you make it sound so simple. No, I know it's not easy, but the process by which you do it is very simple. Actually doing it, I know, is extremely hard when you're not used to doing it. So just like becoming comfy with our emotions, stopping our negative thoughts requires constant commitment, which will not just take weeks, but more likely months. Step number 6 is coping with grief. And even if you have no yearning to go back to your partner, or even get back into touch with your parents, if you're someone who's, or family members, in many cases you'll still need to grieve. You'll need to grieve the years you've lost to an abusive relationship, the dreams that were attached to the relationship, so some that could be kids, and also the relationships, because to recover from these types of toxic people, we almost always have to go full no contact. And for you to do that, you also have to cut ties with those people that are connected to the toxic person. So it's also grieving the relationships that you lost due to ending the relationship. But even then, there may be other things completely unconnected to your toxic person that you haven't grieved properly, things in your past. And it would be very important to try acknowledge these in this step, because the more of this grief you can process at this time, the less restriction you will have in going through your recovery later on. The less blocks you'll have. And journaling is one of the most effective tools to help you through this. I mean, journaling is the most effective tool for just about the whole recovery journey, but this in itself is a really effective tool. Step number 7 is releasing trauma. Now, without even having the trauma of narcissistic abuse, each and every one of us is likely to have some unresolved trauma, many of which we're unlikely to even be aware of. Okay, you'll find when you do some, chakra healing or hypnosis, for some people, these things from the past come up that they didn't even realize were an issue in their life, and but that's normal, and it's nothing to be concerned about. The exercise around emotions that we did, so emotions is step number 4, negative thinking is step number 5, and grieving the relationship or grief, dealing with grief in general, step number 6, will already have helped to release quite a bit of trauma. And some targeting journal around traumatic events is likely to be needed to release most of the traumas. And for most people, working through the 8-step recovery roadmap, this recovery roadmap will in itself release a significant amount of trauma anyway. So literally this whole roadmap actually helps as you go along release the trauma. But this step number 7 is really for focusing on areas of trauma that you're actually specifically aware of. But even then, some traumas are so deep that they may require additional specialist treatment. And if you're working one-to-one with a professional like me or a therapist, we should be able to identify the need for trauma intervention early on in the sort of the coaching or therapy relationship. And these two types of support are likely to happen in tandem. And just to give you an idea, here's a list of interventions that are proven to be successful. EMDR seems to be the most effective for narcissistic abuse, but you may need to use more than one treatment or technique depending on the traumas that you're struggling to release. Okay, so now before we go on to step number 8, does anyone have any questions at this time? Unmute yourself or put in the chat. No questions? Okay, well, I'll carry on to step number 8 then. Okay, so here we have step number 8, which is self-love. Okay, now let me be clear. Self-love is not some namby-pamby shit that only touchy-feely people practice. And I learned that the hard way. I was one of those hardcore, this is how life should be kind of thing. And self-love, don't be silly kind of thing. And but having a healthy level of self-love is essential to be able to live a happy life. And if you have fallen victim to a toxic person of any kind, I can guarantee you that you do not have sufficient self-love. Building our self-love is a core element of healing from narcissistic abuse. So I hope you've recognized that. Okay, so here we have the 10 branches. And just to also mention that time, I always compare the recovery journey to a snakes and ladders game. Snakes and ladders, you have, as you go along, you can either go up a ladder or go down a snake, and the ladders could be short ladders, long ladders, the snakes could be short snakes, long snakes. And so that's very much how a recovery journey is. It's not possible, because we all respond to different things in different ways. It's not possible for it to be a clear linear process, this recovery journey. But this is where I want to reinforce the importance of order in my recovery roadmap, which helps shorten your recovery journey as much as possible. So you're always going to go up those ladders and go down those snakes. That is completely normal. But steps 1 to 7 are an important grounding for building self-love. And now we can work through the self-love branches in a way where development in one branch organically supports development in some branches that are to follow thereafter. Thereby, most likely, with us hitting way more ladders than snakes. And if we do hit snakes, they're unlikely to be those really long ones where you feel you're getting nowhere and possibly even feel like you're moving backwards. So, like I said, although there is no clear linear process to building self-love, there is a purposeful intention in the way I've ordered them. And just to give you an example, say if we were to focus on self-expression before you've done some focused work on self-awareness or self-acceptance, a lot of the time and energy spent on self-expression would be wasted because you would need self-awareness and self-acceptance to be able to fully practice self-expression, thereby making your self-love journey so much longer. So I hope that makes sense to you. And there are a whole range of exercises to develop yourself in each of these self-love branches. And I suppose just to say that each of these branches are in themselves important. It's important to not miss any of them, but some of them are more important than others. Okay, so some of them need loads more work, especially like self-compassion and self-forgiveness is a huge one to deal with, and that's why it comes in the beginning. And yeah, so, and I suppose it's just to recognize that, you know, this whole recovery journey is an emotional roller coaster. And that is one of the things you really have to accept before starting this journey, is that it is going to be a lot of highs, a lot of lows, a lot of hard work, a lot of practice. And if you don't accept that before entering on this healing journey, you really are setting yourself up for failure. Okay, so it's really important that you recognize that. But again, also just to say that, you know, once you get to the end of it, you'll be so pleased that you started. You wish you'd started earlier, because the end result is just a feeling you could never have dreamed you could ever feel. So, and I'm testament to that. So, and you also hear, you know, if you go in the Facebook groups, those people who have done it themselves, they'll tell you, you know, get started ASAP. It's worth every single bit of effort. Okay. Okay, well, there you have the recipe for a successful recovery. I know this might make it all sound very simple, and it is, but I know that doesn't mean it's easy, okay? It is a long, difficult journey requiring real hard work. But I do feel 100% confident that if you were to follow this recovery roadmap, you will recover successfully from that awful thing we all call narcissistic abuse. Okay? And then again, as I'm sure you've got the gist of it, recovery from narcissistic abuse and building our self-love requires so much practice. It's like building a new muscle in how we think about everything, but most importantly, about ourselves. And it really is hard work, and that is why it is so difficult to do it without professional support. I have to be honest and say that I did it on my own in the end. I wasted thousands of pounds on traditional talk therapy, which not only didn't make me feel better, but made me feel even worse, because with all the money I was spending, I wasn't feeling any better. And at the time, I wasn't aware of the availability as well as the importance of specialist support around narcissistic abuse. So my recovery journey actually took me 2 years, but I do know, just like with many of my clients, it's unlikely to have taken me more than 6 months if I'd got the right support at the time. And I just like to take this opportunity to share what working with me actually looks like. So whatever one-to-one program anyone does with me, my clients need to follow my online program, which helps educate them on the importance of each of the steps that they're taking. And it's also where they get allocated their homework. And the reason I do this is because I don't like to waste the one-to-one time on things like the education. There's no reason I have to be the ones who educate them directly in the one-to-one. an online program is more than sufficient for that, and the homework allocation is also not necessary for me to do in my session. However, in the one-to-one sessions, we do review the homework and we make amendments where necessary, because not everyone responds well to certain exercises. And then for the majority of the session, it's focused on what I call scenario-based coaching. And my clients have to record both negative and positive events and interactions throughout the week prior to our one-to-one. And through these scenarios, I help my clients to practice new ways of thinking and behaving to reinforce their self-love, without being able to relate what is taught to us, to our own reality, to relate it to our own reality. It's really very difficult to know how we need to change, especially with narcissistic abuse, having to do it on your own like that, trying to figure out how to adapt to new ways of working is extremely difficult. So this is extremely helpful in really helping my clients practice in our sessions, so that when they go out of the session, they can actually do it for real on their own. Okay, so then my offer to you is, and that is a 45-minute chat with me. That's for free, gratis, and for nothing. And you can find the link in the chat. I think, is the link in the chat there? Oh, actually, sorry, I didn't notice the chat's there. Sorry, I have to admit that I'm not yet. Sorry, Brad, what was not yet? Was that maybe your self-care practice or your journaling? I see you said they're not yet. Oh, I see. Okay. 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 Anyway, the link's in there if you want to book a one-to-one session with me. And I do believe that if you signed up for this, it's because you're struggling in some way. And ask yourself why it wouldn't be worth talking to another professional who might be able to help you, just taking that one next step forward in your recovery. And there are lots of people like me who are offering these free sessions. So, if money is your issue, why don't you go and try find all those people? And I even, if you're really interested, I have a list of other professionals who also offer free conversations, and, really go and make the most of all of them. Because at the end of the day, you do need support to get through this, and the more you're able to reach out and utilize that support, the shorter your healing journey will be. Okay. Sorry, I'm struggling to switch again. I just want to give you an idea after these free calls what some of the people are coming back with, and you're the first person I've spoken to who seems to understand. Now, this is very typical, and you will understand going through this own process of trying to heal from narcissistic abuse. No one seems to understand what you're going through, okay? It's this god-awful feeling that I know for even me when I was going through it, I couldn't even describe it. And if I were to describe it now, I could say it was literally like someone was scraping away at my soul. It was just the most awful feeling. Well, I couldn't describe it at the time. So that is very typical, okay? Then we have, I'm very thankful that you helped me realize this was causing me so much anxiety and that I needed to address it. I feel a lot better now. Thank you so much. Okay? Just one step further in the healing journey. Thank you so much for making time for me today. I really appreciate everything you said to me. I released some emotions I wasn't even aware of. Okay, so they have also got one step further. They weren't even aware of those emotions that they had to release. And in one session, I was able to help them release those emotions. I decided to stay at home yesterday, and because of our chat, I was able to relax and just be. So she was feeling physically threatened by someone she'd actually got no contact with. And because I encouraged her and I showed her how to reach out for support around her support network, she didn't feel that self-worth and self-confidence to actually reach out to them. But anyway, she ended up doing it at the end. And because she was going to go out on her birthday, because she was worried that this person was going to come to her doorstep. But anyway, she stayed at home, and you can see she had a lovely day at home because her support network were there to tell her, don't worry, we'll make sure he doesn't come near the house. I had a conversation with my mother in the way you suggested, mostly, and she was willing to accept my apology this time. Thank you very much. She actually, her relationship with her toxic person impacted almost, well, literally her whole relationship, her parents, her siblings, and actually her nephew quite significantly. And the one person, everyone had accepted her apology, but her mother had still not been willing to forgive her. And we just discussed the conversation on how she could change the conversation. And she had a conversation with her mother, and her mother was willing to forgive her this time. You've helped me realize I'm on the right track with what I'm doing, as well as making me aware of some things I can try. Thanks, so appreciated. So there are many people who are doing this journey on their own. They've put a lot of work into it, and just literally by coming on the call with me, I validate that what they're doing, they're doing well, and that it's working. And I might give them some more tips to go away with. Well, more likely I do give them some more tips to go away with. But sometimes that in itself can just be a huge help. You know, you can imagine what the journey is on your own, and just by having someone validate that you're doing things right is a great help. Okay, that's that. Okay, any questions from anyone? No questions from anyone? Okay, well, you know, if you want to come and talk to me, you know how to book a chat with me. And, you know, if you don't want to speak openly about whatever's going on in your life, I understand that completely. But yeah, please feel free to reach out to me. You will get, so from now, I'll send you the recording. You should get it tomorrow. The recording, the self-care e-guide, and what you will also get automatically is I have a 16-week email series. And this actually, to over a 16-week period, I help you, I support you through going through this roadmap. And the feedback, it is new. I have to admit, it's new. It's only been going for about 12 weeks now. But the feedback I'm getting is really so heartwarming. I never imagined it could be, you know, it would be so good. So I would really encourage you. Actually, I was on a call. I actually support another coach on one of her courses, and she's actually doing it herself, and she hasn't been impacted by narcissistic abuse, and she was encouraging her members to sign up to it, just to say, look, whether you've been impacted by narcissistic abuse or not, it's a fantastic series to develop yourself, your self-love. So I'd really encourage you, you guys are going to get it anyway, but I'd really encourage you to look out for those emails and actually try and do the exercises in that. And you don't have to keep 16 weeks, okay? 16 weeks is actually a reasonably short period of time for recovery, so I wouldn't expect you to keep to it, but I have done that just for those people who maybe haven't been impacted very significantly by narcissistic abuse. Is there a... Sorry, I'm a bit slow with the... Very good. Very good, Rachel. And Brad. Oh, Brad started journaling last week. Well done. Brad, have you noticed the difference in the difference it's making, journaling? Oh, fantastic. Okay. Rachel, okay, you're going to start this week. Okay, pleasure, Claire. Oh, fantastic. Oh, yes, definitely with ruminations. And Brad, I don't know if I sent you the exercise, the other exercise for ruminations with the negative list. If not, let me know and I'll send that to you. Okay. Okay, and that's that really. So I'd just like to say thank you so much for all of you joining, and I wish you all the best in your recovery journey. You know where to find me if you need any help. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. And until then, don't forget, be good to yourselves. Bye.